morning, good afternoon, good evening, anytime you get to watch this. This is your brother and friend, Jojo of Demons Media. Let's have a conversation. Is this a myth or a reality? Is Africa poor? Or is it a misconception, trivialization, or a myth? Stay with me as we go through this, and I guess we will arrive at a point where we both will agree whether or not Africa is poor. Now, I personally believe, based on the data, that wealth sharing in Africa is not as brilliant as it may be elsewhere. I get it. Now, is there a reason to that? There are so many reasons, geopolitics and all sorts, because obviously you and I, if you may not agree with me, but you and I know that our leaders, especially our politicians, most of the time are bribed. They are influenced, they are encouraged to steal our wealth or to keep our wealth in a certain way so that the West can easily influence and lay their hands on whichever resources that they may need to develop themselves at a fraction of how much they are technically supposed to give. Hence, it makes it difficult for wealth sharing to be as it is supposed to be. Now, we'll put that one aside. Our politicians, once again, I don't like bashing them. By the end of the day, if you're a leader and you don't do what it is that is expected of you, especially when you have made so much promises and you are not delivering them as you're supposed to. Now, I guess you are opening yourself up for us to criticize you, to critique that which you do, to critique that which you seem to put across. And then we go on to geopolitics, as I've already mentioned. And you look at this whole thing and you ask yourself as to why is it that we've not been able to do things that we're supposed to do. Now let's hit on another one, which is sharing of education, i.e. Academic poverty. Because I can narrow the whole poverty thing down to what we call deficit. So we have financial deficit, we have academic deficit, we have a health deficit, and so on and so forth. So if once we talk about economic deficit, which is to say that, for instance, look at it, Africans can go into the world, especially into the Western world, to negotiate properly our natural resources that the Western world needs. Do we blame our politicians? There's this and that. Because at the end of the day, I personally believe that if we are able to discover well and truly what goes on when it comes to the negotiations and stuff, we might be a little bit lenient on our politicians. But at the same time, our politicians sometimes go over there to negotiate things and negotiate for themselves instead of it benefiting the entire people that they go over there to represent. For instance, let me give you an example. The electronic taxi in Africa, for instance, Uber, Bolt, Yango in Ghana. I don't know whether all these three are in other parts of Africa. But if you look at it, for instance, how much Uber charges the drivers is way higher. As a matter of fact, I think it's 200 times higher than in the Western world. Can we blame them? They are doing business. So as they came over here, if our politicians that went over there to negotiate on our behalf went over there with their interest, then obviously they're going to come up with a higher tariff for us. In spite of all these things, now we go to education. Are we learning the practical things that we're supposed to learn to help us take life from one point to the other? Or are we just learning things just for the sake of learning? I'll give you once again an example. In my country, Ghana, like if you speak English, you are intelligent. I don't think it's only in Ghana. I think it's many parts of the world. You cannot measure intelligence based on how fluent someone is in a language. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about when it comes to education, are the things that we are learning really relevant? Are they the knowledge that we need to take us out of poverty into a middle income or a high income or whatever? I mean, obviously the data speaks to the fact that poverty has reduced in Africa, whereas extreme poverty is some way, somehow not really reduced in as much. And extreme poverty this is normally found in the rural areas. That is to say that there are other things. We've spoken about financial deficit, educational deficit. Are we really learning that which is relevant for alleviating poverty? And then we talk about climate change. deficit in that side, but it doesn't only affect us in Africa, it affects the whole world. But the point here is, for instance, in Ghana, when you look at the main things that we are fighting for, we are fighting and it's becoming a menace, it's becoming a big deal. When you look at things like illegal mining, the way we are carrying on, well and truly, if you look into it, if one is well educated formally and informally, you will realize that, for instance, you will not sit down to let anybody come and influence you for you to do things anyway, anyhow. You understand? And then if things are put in place the way they ought to be put in place and checks and balances are done, then one will be very careful doing whatever it is that they need to do, in spite of all these challenges that I have mentioned, in as much as some of them we are to be blamed, some of them we are not to be blamed. Geopolitics coming from the West, which Kwame Nkrumah spoke about in his book. God rest his soul. Geopolitics as it goes. Look at what is happening in Burkina Faso. Look at what is happening in Mali, Guinea, and all of them places. You understand? We are beginning to wake up to know, and we are beginning to wake up to reject and refute certain things that has been going on that has crippled us for us to become as poor as people may call it. But the question here is it a myth or is it a reality? In other aspects, you could call them a myth. In other aspects, you could call them a reality. I don't know about you. Let's share our thoughts in the comment. But for me in particular, in conclusion to this video, I'm going to call it a myth. And this is what I mean by a myth. In spite of everything, our bad roads, our unstable economy, our unstable energy and everything, in spite of all these things, let me narrow the whole thing down to like Ghana. Once again, right? I come from Ghana, so I feel very comfortable talking about my country, and I know a lot from this side of the world. Let's talk about Ghana. In Ghana, if you see anybody owning a property, if you see anybody or if you know anybody that owns any property, the person owns 187%. What I mean by that is the person owns the property wholly. I mean, it's not on credit. It's the person owns it. If somebody owns a 4-bedroom, a 6-bedroom, 8-bedroom, 10-bedroom, it's for the person. It's not mortgaged. There's no credit on it. You see the person driving Bentley, they bought it outright. So now tell me, how do you call somebody who buys things cash and holds them, and somebody who buys things on credit, and you call the one who buys things all out poor? I get it. A lot of people cannot do that. That's an argument. But you cannot compare a credit economy to a physical cash kind of economy. In this case, I believe you agree with me that Africa, we are not poor. It's misinterpretation, misconception, trivialization, and also to say things to register for it to obviously have that negative impact on us. So we'll be walking about and carrying it across that, oh, we're poor, we're puppets, we need help, and no, we're not really poor. Yes, we may have poor leaders who don't lead us the way they ought to lead us. Yeah, we may be poor academic-wise. Yeah, we may be poor in environmental protection-wise. But technically, when you put things together, 2 and 2, on a scale, we're not poor. Because we own things and we own them outright. Take a moment and subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts and comments in the comment box. Let's share ideas and grow and do this together. At the end of the day, as I keep on saying, what do I know? But still, it's my take.